New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Live from a secure concrete bunker somewhere in Ohio, New Thought Media Network presents Pastor Michael Mangus with Friday's Fireside Chat, spiritual conversation for today. Here he is from the secret radio room, surrounded by thousands of watts, Pastor Michael Mangus.
Well, good evening to everyone across the nation and around the world. It is time for another fun-thrilled, thrill-packed edition of the Fireside Chat here on New Thought Media Network. I am Pastor Michael Mangus, broadcasting from the secret radio room that's somewhere in Akron, Ohio. It's really good to have everyone in touch with us this evening. The purpose of our Fireside Chat here is to get real, is to talk about contemporary issues from a New Thought spiritual perspective. And as I said a couple of weeks ago, I want us all to have a new thought about what is going on around us, not only here in the United States, but also in the world. We have lots of things happening during the week here at the New Thought Media Network. Again, Monday Morning Visioning, Cosmic Prayer with Laura Topper at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, Mystical Writers Hangout, New Thought for Today with Reverend Z and Reverend Robert. We have a wonderful midweek pick-me-up at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Also, and I like calling it Joyzy. Joyzy Girl Wisdom with Reverend Dr. Michelle Wadley at 10 a.m. Ministers Talking Crap podcast with Reverend Robert and also Reverend Z. On Fridays, we do have a collective meditation for peace, the Heart of Peace meditation at 9 a.m. Mountain, Fireside Chat here on the New Thought Media Network every Friday evening at 6 p.m. Mountain. The Camille Conti Show, which is on newthoughtmedia.org. Lots of stuff. If you go to newthoughtmedia.org, again, you'll get more information. And all of this depends upon your loving support. As I said before, we offer great gifts here. Let me show you that I got in the mail this week. I got my mug this week for my donation. Isn't that nice? But you get an extra special donation, an extra special gift. And that is by you donating to this network, you affect not only people in this country, in the United States, but around the world. We have viewers of our program all over. And it's because of you. Your loving donations here. And again, we have bills to pay. And we have a whole list of stuff that we need to get going on. So we ask for your help. Again, if any of the programs have touched your heart, please donate. If you go ahead and you go on New Thought Media Network.org/donate, you will get a lot more information there. from the great city of Washington, D.C., my friend and best-selling Amazon author, and also life coach, teacher, and my personal friend for over 20 years. Here she is, Reverend Dr. Charlette Manning.
20
Hello,
years.
good evening.
Hey, how are you?
Oh, good.
Hey,
I've been
everybody. 20 years. Wow.
20 years. Wow.
Yeah.
Been a long time.
We have clocks and miles together, haven't we, brother?
Oh, we have. Well, let's talk about what happened here in our nation's capital. We've all seen the news reports from January 6th. So what are you hearing? What are some of the reports that you are getting from your contacts and also from the street?
You know, it's very interesting to me looking at it from this perspective and recognizing that there is an awakening happening. Okay. And, you know, you and I talked about, you know, giving birth, you know, when you're giving birth to a new consciousness, a new awareness, you know, the women out here can attest to this that are mothers. They understand that labor is bloody. It's painful. It's you just don't think you're ever going to get through it until that new life comes forth. And I think I want to look at this from a little bit of a different perspective because my work is around forgiveness. And I have been in this industry for over 20 years. And one of the things I know for sure is we celebrate Dr. King's birthday. And you and I were talking a little bit about that previously. Dr. King would have been 92 years old today. And as I was preparing for our time together, I just went back and I looked at some of the quotes that he used, and some of them, you know, are really, really famous. And some of those, you know, the arc of the moral universe bends long, but it bends towards justice. That's one of the famous ones. But Dr. King also said, we may have come here in different boats, on different ships, but right now we're in the same boat. So we are going through a transformation of consciousness. And the Bible says, as you sow, so shall you reap. And this country was founded on the backs of indigenous people. Slaves were the only race of people. Africans are the only race of people that came to this country against their will and with a job. Okay. The African American or the Negro, colored, African American race of people, if you look at this, are genetically engineered people. They were created, they were a race of people created through rape. Okay, so when we start to think about the history of this country, one of the other things that Dr. King said was that a lie cannot live. The Bible says in the book of Genesis, it says in the 15th chapter of Genesis, it says that you will be a stranger in a land that is not your own for 400 years. It is written in the book of Genesis. So we are 402 years into a land that is not our own.
So
we're going through this transformation.
So you see this as a part of what we are seeing right now as part of a transformational evolution that's happening here.
It's a healing. It's a healing, and yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So you were involved in the Black Lives Matter March this summer. Talk to us about the difference in security and also the security on January 6th.
Well, we had a really big march on Washington this summer. And prior to even the Black Lives Matter contingent around, and these were young people, these were Black people, these were people of color, these were white people. I mean, it was the sea of humanity that we saw that come to the nation's capital on Black Lives Matter Plaza. And we saw National Guardsmen lined up on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. The Lincoln Memorial where Dr. King gave his famous I Have a Dream speech. We saw weaponized National Guardsmen standing on that statue, on that memorial, keeping people at bay so that they were unable to. Now, there was a lot of stuff that went on with the Black Lives Matter. There were some bad things in terms of looting, in terms of setting things on fire, some fights and things that broke up, but nothing like we saw the other day. And trust me, the number of people that were arrested in this circumstance far exceeded what is going on in the nation's capital right now.
And that's and that's one of the reasons why I've said to individuals that if you don't believe or even think that there's such a thing as white privilege, you need to take a look at the difference between the Black Lives Matter march and also what happened on the 6th. Again, the reason I call this out is because that we need to end all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We need that. We need to again, like we were talking about the 400-year period. This is the time to heal that.
And I agree with you, but you cannot heal something that is not exposed. So, when you saw a white privileged police officer with his knee on the neck of a Black man for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, and you saw the police officer day before on January the 6th with a white man's knee on him, beating him with the American flag, a police officer who literally had to beg for his life. Now, you can't turn away from that. You can't say that this is a different circumstance or a different situation. And a lot of people are, it's like when you are sympathizing or empathizing with someone, you say, everything's going to be okay. And you say that because that's your easy way out. You don't have to confront the reality of anything when you kind of ease your way out of it. So people will say, I really don't think that there's racism in this country because they haven't experienced that. But when I can tell you that as a young person growing up right here in Alexandria, Virginia, with colored and white bathrooms, and I was called nigger so much that I thought it was my middle name, you go through this process is when you said, are you really serious about this? However, I can't bring that to the attention of a privileged white person. Do you understand what I'm saying? Oh, absolutely. That has to be exposed. And that's the gift that COVID has given us. COVID has given us the opportunity to be locked down and locked in so that we bear witness to this. And as you said, you started out saying, you're not the kind of person that watches the news all day, every day. But when something happens and draws your attention in there, as Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you got to do better. You can't turn your back on it when you know better. And Dr. King had another saying that says the ultimate tragedy is not the oppression and cruelty by the oppressor or the bad people. It's the silence of the good people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think the silence also of the white community and who did join Dr. King in the streets. Mm-hmm. However, I think that we have come to another point in evolution where we need to all stick up for everyone.
Yeah.
For all lives to matter, Black lives have to matter. I wanted to get your opinion. So how do we heal this, Charlette? Do you think that the actions of the outgoing president will trigger a much bigger conflict?
Well, I think that we have to do some healing. And I think that just like COVID, it's going to get worse before it gets better. But if we are willing, and that just brings me to my little publication, my little commercial here, okay? And it's called Forgive. And it's 7 steps to finding forgiveness and returning to love. And like anything, there's a process that goes with that. And I have another book that I'm going to be writing a book a month on each one of these tenets over the next 7 months. And the next book is on the F in Forgive, which is about facing your fears. And a lot of stuff what's happening now is ignorance. And we don't read, we don't study, we don't meditate, we don't do any of those things. We have to become the healing that we seek. We got to become the love that we seek. So the only way you cast out darkness is you become the light.
I know that, again, that you're tied into the NAACP. What has your information been about police reform and the restructuring about around the country since the Black Lives Matter march? And as I said before, the reason I bring this up was because that we received news that there was a recent falling out between the Youngstown, Ohio mayor and also their now former police chief, because he wanted to reform the police department to go ahead and to have more community policing, to have more mental resources available for the people of Youngstown. So what is your
Well, we have to come to the realization that you ain't gonna make everybody happy all the time. Somebody's gonna get ticked off about all of this, and this is their way. And sometimes you got to get rid of the dead weight in order to bring forth. Now we do know everything that started out when this movement first began was defund the police. Nobody has any desire to defund the police in terms of policing. However, we do understand that police officers are not therapists. They react based on their circumstance and their orientation. So
and their training.
That's what I mean, their orientation. So when you spend more time on how to eliminate a situation by eliminating the target rather than de-escalation. I mean, Dylan Roof, who killed 9 people, got taken to Burger King for a burger before they took him to jail. You just see that there's a different dynamic with how police officers treat people of privilege as opposed to those that they don't. So we need to get a clearer understanding of how to interact. And if you don't live in the communities that you're servicing, you have absolutely no way of understanding the people that everybody's not a criminal. They may be poor, they may be Black, they may be, have only single family homes or whatever, but that does not make them a thug or a gangster or a gang member. We have to become more compassionate with our thinking and how we go about and seeing the best in someone rather than, focusing on what we believe is the worst about them.
Absolutely. And so Charlette, how should we be praying now? Sometimes I find myself frustrated with that. So what are some things that we should be working on?
Well, I also believe that, faith is an action word. Hope is a passive word. Hope is knowing that all things are going to work together for good Faith is knowing that when you get there, everything that you need will be provided for you. And one of the things that I talk about in facing your fears is that if there's just one thread of hope, then we all know that we cannot continue to live like this. You know, we have to find some moral high ground. And that has to begin with conversation. And you can't be afraid. As I shared with you before, I have a very close friend of mine who was a Trump supporter in terms of the things that he represented around draining the swamp and all of this other kind of stuff, but not in the behavior that we saw on January the 6th. So I think of the 70 million people that supported him, and 70 plus million is a whole lot of people. All of those people, there were 15,000 people that they said that were on the Capitol steps the other day. That's not 70 million. Okay. So yes, we have some riffraff that we're going to have to deal with. And how we deal with that was we pray for their humanity, because God created them too. Whether we like it or not, God created them in the image and unto his likeness. So we have to see, just like that police officer said, he said, I could have pulled my weapon. I could have shot my way through this. They would have taken my weapon and they probably would have ended up shooting me. Or I could plead with their compassion. And he said to them, I have children.
Wow.
He said, I have children. And there were, I don't know if there were women, I don't know who it was, but all of a sudden there was a surrounding, they surrounded him and protected him and helped him get up out of that circumstance and back to his partner. So we have to find the compassion. We talked about the woman in California who was being accosted by some of those, and one of the bear hugged the redheaded guy bear hugged her to protect her from them, because he saw that it was a circumstance. They're compassionate people out there, and we have to, like you talked about, wearing your mask. You can't be angry at somebody that's not wearing their mask. You just got to put the light of God around them, the love of God enfold them, the power of God protect them, the presence of God watching over. And that's how, when I go for my walk in the morning, I'll be circling them with love.
So give them your contact information, please. If people
you can go to my website, which is drcharlettemanning.com. I am on Facebook. I do Facebook Nuggets every morning between 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning. And that's Dr. Charlette Stokes Manning on Facebook. I'm Dr. C.S. Manning on Instagram. I'm on all of the media things. And if you go to my website, we have a free gift for you called Awakening to Your Life's Purpose. And that's 21 steps to living the life, your best life now. You can go and get a free copy of that and join my community.
How wonderful. Again, thank you, dear friend.
I love you. You know you are the man. God bless you.
God bless you.
I love you.
Oh, I love you too. Thank you.
All right.
And now, let me introduce our very special guest this evening. Greg Coleridge is the National Outreach Director of Move to Amend. He previously worked for more than 3 decades with the American Friends Service Committee here in Akron, Ohio, where he educated
partner. So we your best,
including to help coordinate Move to Amend activities here in the Buckeye State. He's the author of Citizens Over Corporations, a writer of a documentary called Corp or Nation, the story of citizens and corporations in Ohio, and has contributed several articles to an anthology. He currently maintains and distributes via email a weekly Real Democracy History Calendar and Monetary History Calendar. He loves camping, hiking, walking, swimming, especially with his wife, his daughter, and son-in-law, of all who I've met, and almost everything else outdoors. And he forgot to mention that he also plays a mean game of basketball. Here he is, my longtime friend from high school, Greg Coleridge.
Well, hello, Pastor Mike. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thanks for being on the program with us this evening.
Very good of you to have me. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. So tell me about your reactions to January 6th and the insurrection at the Capitol. What was going through your mind, your feelings?
Yeah. Well, like so many of us and you and people who are watching, no doubt, just shocked, surprised, frightened. What happened was dangerous, a threat to representative democracy in trying to overturn an election. It was an assault, certainly on people who were trying to protect the Capitol, police officers, but also potentially an assault on life and limb of many of those who we elect to represent us, of both political parties, all political persuasions, who feared for their safety. And to see it play out the way it did from the start of a rally, and you know that I participated in many rallies in Washington, D.C. and many other places. And, we here in Ohio are not that far away from Washington, D.C., a 6-7 hour bus ride and you're there. And so, we know all those places where people congregate and how it works, right? So doing rallies and doing symbolic protests and marches and signs, and starting in one place and ending up in another. And, not always completely in word anyway, nonviolent, but certainly in action, nonviolent. And for the most part, where and when we have encountered the police, there is no police department anywhere in the country that is better trained to handle nonviolent, protesters than Washington, because there are people there all the time. But what people were not, people who were police, whether they were in the community, city, or Capitol Police, what they were not prepared for, obviously, was that assault. And I mean, there's all kind of takeaways. We could spend a whole lot of time focused on that. But I think, what's extremely important to recognize, and I think to acknowledge, is that this was not designed. This was not planned. This was not, yes, there was a certain degree of spontaneity, but there was a whole heck of a lot of pre-plan, of deliberate intent to try to disrupt and not acknowledge the constitutional role of Congress to certify an election.
All based upon the whole lie that the elections weren't, that the elections were fixed and everything else. And again, the Trump administration plus also their legal team went through 60 plus legal challenges again, and they proved nothing. So these individuals we're trying to stop the steal on the whole idea of a lie.
Well, absolutely. I mean, just sort of backing up a bit on, what was it that triggered this kind of anger and this kind of action? It's exactly what it was. Not just a lie that emanated from the rally that morning, but that was a long time in planning. And those who study psychology, that goes back, many decades, says that the bigger the lie you say, and the more frequently you say it, the greater chance that, particularly if it's coming from a source of perceived authority, then the more likely it is to be believed. But you have to be consistent in telling the lie, in doubling down, in tripling down. And the difference between today than the last, several decades, when such theories of psychology were introduced, is that we now have social media and social media platforms that are able to, to amplify and to, quote unquote, in their own way, to in a perverted way, legitimize by having people who are perceived of as media experts, who are supposed to be telling
the truth
through news, who are perpetuating this and fomenting it. And when you add then the layer on top of that of fear and anger of people who feel like that something is going to be taken away from them, because they feel that they have been wronged for a long time, and that what is going to happen is unfair and is going to treat them badly because of other lies that have been told to them around race and, also nationality and the like. It all adds up. And so, I mean, there's a lot of blame to go around. Certainly Trump and his minions, those in Congress who with a straight face knew full well, Hawley, Cruz, Johnson, Mo Brooks, and others who were both at the rally and then who were inside the Capitol, who were trying to, hold up the election. The media, particularly the, social media of Twitter and Facebook, that for a long time, hey, this stuff sells, right? Extremism is profitable.
I wanted to talk about, so we saw what did not work. So again, you've been doing this a long time. So what doesn't work and what does work as far as bringing about social change?
Well, I think one thing we have to recognize is that there certainly is cause for protest in this country. This country was born of protest, right? Those people who decided to throw, to dress up as indigenous people and throw tea off the ship in Boston Harbor. The East India Company provided refreshments for that occurrence. Those were people who committed acts of protest and quite honestly committed acts of civil disobedience, right? They were destroying property, if you will. But the difference, and there's a long history, obviously, of protest in this country. When it has been most effective, it has been based on, I think, moral principles that people have been wronged from the get-go, that from the beginning, we the people have never been all the people. We the people from the get-go were, for the most part, it's hard for many of us to accept, but white male property owners were, which represented, today we hear, the 1%ers, but back then it was like 5 to 6% were the white male property owner. Everybody else was not a real person, was a 3/5 person. If you're a woman, you're a rib of a man. If you're an indigenous person, you're not even any percentage or fraction. You're considered a beast. And savages, which look at the Declaration of Independence. That's how Native people are referred to in our Declaration of Independence as savages. They're not even human. So, from the get-go, people who have sought for things like justice and for things like equality and being treated with dignity and respect have had, I think, that that moral compass and that moral rightness behind them. But then it's not just the message, it's the actions. The actions they have taken then have been to, what many people have sort of defined, and there are some historians that have looked at how social changes occurred. A guy named Gene Sharp, he's a historian, goes way back to Greece and Rome, and how social change happened, and how governments and authoritarians and emperors were overthrown through nonviolent actions. And basically the system and the route and the prescription is pretty much the same. People are either, focusing on sort of symbolic protest and persuasion, things like rallies and standing and vigiling and the things like that, or they up the ante a bit and do non-cooperation, whether it's political non-cooperation or economic non-cooperation. By economic, those are things like boycotts, what we saw in the South, right, of the bus boycott against the civil wrongs committed against African Americans. But then there's also resistance, where you just sort of gum up the system, where you try to sit and block the trains that are taking weapons overseas or to Central America, or the nuns who resist and go on to nuclear weapon sites and symbolically take a hammer and try to pound on a nuclear weapon. I mean, that's both sort of symbolic. You're not obviously defanging that weapon, but at the same time you are resisting. You are going onto the property and trying to gum up the system. So that has a lot of moral power, of moral strength. And
so you're saying, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and so, you've seen throughout history where people, have used what sources of social power they have. We may not have the system of government that we may feel is oppressive to wage a nonviolent battle for justice, peace, democracy. We may not have the military behind us, but we may have moral authority. We may have certain human resources. We may have skills and knowledge that we bring to the table, or certain natural resources that work for us, or psychological factors. I mean, there's just a whole assortment and range of tools that people have used and that have been successful. Just the one last thing I think it's important.
Okay, go ahead.
A woman by the name of Erica Chenoweth, who I think she teaches University of Denver or something. She was a Gulf War vet, and she's looked at nonviolent social change in more modern times, and has found that particularly in situations, this is outside the United States, where you have leadership that is, flat out oppressive, where if you protest, the military will come out and start shooting and the like. And they have found in doing research that when one uses as a movement in trying to build a movement, that when you do those things and you are nonviolent, you are twice as successful as if you were violent. And that you need two factors to be successful. One is, obviously you have to have more than 50% of the people who agree with you, whatever that is. And if you're waging violence and hurting people, you're going to obviously alienate a whole large number of people, particularly those in the middle. So you need, obviously, people to be for you. And one of the ways that they are for you is you sacrifice. You are selfless. Sometimes you risk being beaten up or arrested or the like. But the second condition you have to have, other than simply more than 50% of the people behind you, is something like 2.5 to 3.5% of the population who really are willing to sort of go to the mat, who are willing to do more than just, hey, I'm for you, or occasionally I'll, write a letter or make a phone call, but who are sort of really into it, who are willing maybe to risk arrest in doing nonviolent action or doing something 4 or 5 times a week, that kind of thing. When you put those two things together, it really does make a big difference.
So talk to us about what you're doing with Move to Amend and what that is all about and what you are doing personally to bring about reform.
Move to Amend is an organization got started when the Citizens United Supreme Court decision happened in 2010. People may be aware that is merely the latest in a long line of constitutional decisions that concretize or legitimize, legalize the notion two things. One, that political money in elections is equal to free speech. Money equals speech. Bizarre. Money's not speech. Money's property. If money is speech, then those who have the most money have the most speech. Not a real good definition of anything approaching real democracy. And second, we're trying to eliminate the notion, equally bizarre, that corporations are persons. Again, the Supreme Court in several dozen decisions going back all the way to the 1800s have equated corporations with Bill of Rights protections, First, Fourth, Fifth, 14th Amendment, 14th Amendment giving due process, equal protection of free black slaves. And that was applied to corporations, not to free black slaves. So what we're trying to do is have this constitutional amendment called the We the People Amendment to pass Congress. You can get more information, go to movetoamend.org. We have about 500,000 people that are part of this movement. To be part of that movement, go to movetoamend.org/motion and join us as we are working across the country. More than 705 communities across the country have passed a resolution either in their city council or through the ballot calling for this. And basically, we're just of the opinion that, Victor Hugo once said, what did he say? That nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come. And we think the whole idea of getting big money out of politics and that only human beings are people, not corporations, not money, people are people. And that is an idea whose time has come. And if we can get big money out of elections and get rid of corporate rule, which is ruling over, you name it, you fill in the blank, then we have an opportunity to maybe authentically, for the very first time, have authentic democracy, because we've never had it.
Greg Coleridge is with Move to Amend. If you go to movetoamend.org, you'll get more information about all the wonderful things that they are doing. Greg, thank you so very much. Thank you for being my friend over the years. Thank you that all the good stuff that you do out there. Just really, really appreciate you putting yourself on the line out there for
great work you're doing. I mean, just to get into the media the way you're doing, we have to take back the media. We have to democratize the media. The corporate entities have controlled it. And when you focus on a profit system, as the way it is, I mean, it's doomed because you're just chasing the bucks.
Thank you so very much, Greg. Thank you very much for being. Again, if you'd like more information on the things that Greg is doing, again, if you go to movetoamend.org, you'll have more information about that. It's my honor to present right now our very special guest. If I spent the whole time reading his wonderful bio, we would be here until 2:00 in the morning. Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson has been frequently referred to as a Renaissance man and a visionary thought leader. As a lifelong learner with a passion for self-development, personal transformation, transmutation, and self-awakening, he lives his bliss as a teacher, mentor, speaker, minister, and a lot more. Currently serves on the board of the Centers for Spiritual Living Greater Baltimore. Has a very active ministry on the East Coast, again, going up and down, especially when COVID wasn't happening, but I know that he's still doing it via Zoom. Going up and down the East Coast and again spreading his wonderful message. He has more degrees than I know to say. I just wanted to read this last paragraph because I really like this. It says, Ray continues to be ever vigilant, walking the walk and talking the talk by living as authentically and transparently as possible to honor those he loves, his father, his mother, his sons, his grandchildren, brothers and sisters, nieces and nephews, and the entire Ohana, which is Hawaiian for family. By being the change that Gandhi spoke of, Ray intends each day to live fully, freely, using each breath to serve the universal whole in love and compassion. My honor to present to you here one of my wonderful colleagues, Reverend Dr. Raymond Anderson. There you go, sir.
Honor to be with you and the community. Yes, we're about to have fun.
So I wanted to have you on because of your wonderful comments that happened a few weeks ago. Your comments, Reverend Dr. Raymont.
I don't even know where to start, so I'm going to start with one of those phrases that we often say in CSL, religious science, since socially active: treat and move your feet. Doesn't say treat and have a seat. It says treat and move your feet. Now, that's being active. That's getting out there and acting as if that is what you have prayed is already answered prayer. Now, socially, we are a social organism. Humans are social beings. The story in the Bible of the Good Samaritan was someone who is socially active, who saw a wounded person on the side of the road, and rather than doing what everyone else that walked by did, oh, I will simply step over them. Oh, I will walk around them. Oh, I will avert my eyes. Oh, this is not my problem. Clearly, if he had done something better with his prayer or his life, or he must have attracted this, for the law of attraction works that way for him. So that's his to deal with, not mine. But the Good Samaritan, the reason that is emphasized as a parable by Yeshua, the leader of mind science in that period, is because what he is saying is, look, there comes a time when you have to step off of your Sadducees and Pharisees throne of this is not mine to do, for thus I shall not touch it. You have to come off of that lily white throne of I don't touch, I don't deal with, they're the untouchables, they're the prostitutes, they're the tax gatherers, etc. You have to come down and be with the people. That's the lesson of the Good Samaritan, among other things, but it is be involved. And now, not only did the Good Samaritan help this individual, took him somewhere to get treatment, but paid the innkeeper to say, look, I'm getting ready to go. Here's money to make sure that his treatment can continue so that he will, because I can't stay. Make sure that he gets well and goes about his business so he can live happily. If that's not a lesson of being socially active, then what we are engaged in is a teaching of spiritual masturbation. It is simply about self-enjoyment, self-growth, and that's all. And if that's the case, then there should be no centers. There's no need to gather money for tithes, to create programs for outreach, or to help the seniors, or to help, there's no need. There's no need for a building. There's no need for fellowship hall. There's no need for any of that. If it's all about I, me, and that me never becomes we, then all we're going to do is cry all the way home. I was recently on Unity Online Radio and had a conversation with Reverend Galen McDowell, who was brought up in the teaching of the Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman. And he reminded me in that conversation that she would often remind the students, you cannot, because she referenced this department store that no longer is there, but I'll use Sears as an example. You cannot go to Sears and use an affirmation to buy a dress. In other words, you have to put principle into practice in order to buy this dress or buy this car. Simply praying and that's all, that's not enough. Holding seeds in my hand and praying for them to grow, it's not enough. If I want these seeds to grow, then they must be planted in nutrient-rich soil, given sunlight and water in order for them to engage in this involution of natural law to grow. So if a minister chooses themselves not to be involved, that is their prerogative. Not everyone, because I often tell people, even during the civil rights movement, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. knew that not everybody was going to be able to go on the front lines. Not everybody could go sit at a Woolworth counter and have hot coffee and stuff poured on them without reacting back. So what can you do? You can answer phones. What can you do? You do envelopes. What can you do? You pray. What can you do? You march with us. Everyone in the movement has that which is theirs to do. Spirit is individualizing itself in, through, and as each and every one of us. That means if someone feels it is theirs to do, to sign a petition or to visit Congress and speak or whatever it is, including join a Black Lives Matter march, if that's what they feel is theirs to do, that's theirs to do. And I, as a minister, it is not my job to discourage them from doing what they feel is theirs to do. If they are engaging in something that I feel is a dangerous practice, then of course I will advise against that as pastoral counseling and their minister. But if they're involved in a non-violent, a peaceful protest, a march for peace, then are they not stepping out there to be the change? Don't pray, just pray for change. Don't just meditate for change. Be it. And if you're going to be it, then it means showing up fully in, through, and as that. So for me, it's each person find that place within yourself where what resonates, what is mine to do? How do I, maybe that's courageous and awkward conversations. Maybe that is going to a march. Whatever that is for you, that is yours to figure out. But to tell someone, so you feel called to be an ER surgeon, why would you want to do that? Of all the things you could do, that's not yours to do. It's not ours to tell them what is theirs to do. Spirit is incarnating as them. My job as their minister is to assist them in nurturing that and pouring into their life so that they can do what they are here to do, demonstrating their spiritual magnificence. I think my experience is that many of us avoid this because we are afraid to engage. Many of us don't really treat and move our feet because it's uncomfortable to have those conversations about race and sexism and homophobia and xenophobia. It's uncomfortable to engage in conversations about politics. It's uncomfortable. That's why, as a culture, we say, here's a list of things that we will never talk about. Don't talk about sex. Don't talk about politics. Don't talk about religion. Don't talk about money. We have a list of things we don't talk about. But if we are going to be divine beings, having a divine experience that we call human, then that means all of these untalkable things are how God shows up. God shows up as politics, as money, as sex, as God shows up in all of this because there's not a spot where God is not.
Right.
So why do we not engage God at that level in all of those places? In the science of mind, we do not say that everything is all right when it is all wrong. Right? So we're not denying it. That's from Holmes. Holmes said that if this situation, this experience, this condition is showing up, then we're not going to sidestep it and bypass and say, that's just an illusion. We're going to address it. So let's 3 steps back, because Emma Curtis Hopkins also says in one of her books, she refers to a young African-American girl, 1, as colored, 2, that her kinky hair, they prayed for it to go straight and the prayer was answered. Now, today, that would not be acceptable, right? But during that time period, it was normal to, 1, refer to her as colored, and 2, to even dare to say, we'll pray for her hair to be made straight. Why does it need to be made straight? Because then that implies that her natural African-American hair being kinky is wrong. Then in another place, same book, she refers to someone as a Kaffir, which is a South African word for nigger. That would not fly today either. So just because we exalt people of the past, we exalt people in unity, but the Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman was not permitted to stay on campus during the time that she was a student there and working towards her ordination because it was segregated. And it wasn't until many years later that unity came back and repented of or atoned for that, right? But why did they not? Because it was the law of the land. Today, we have a different law of the land. There are many things that are interplayed today, even within our own movement. It wasn't that long ago that a group of ministers would not unanimously say, we as a movement will engage in marriage equality and marry LGBTQ folks. That wasn't that long ago. It's only been recently that that's even become something where we're engaging in the conversation more. And if prayer was enough, since we're going to talk Emma Curtis Hopkins, Ernest Holmes, Charles Myrtle Fillmore, and Troward, name every single trailblazer of the movement of New Thought. You can go back to Phineas Parkhurst Quimby and way back. I don't care how far you go back. If all it took was prayer, then why are we still wrestling with these issues today? If they had the consciousness to fix it, then why is there still racism, sexism, homophobia, xenophobia, etc. today? Why are we still, many centers, struggling financially? If their prayers were enough, no movement, no social engagement, no action, just pray. Do your own work. They did their work. Emma Curtis Hopkins was the teacher of teachers. Hundreds of people, hundreds, possibly thousands of people that she influenced and taught. If they were enough, then why are we not already in a world that works for all, where all of this thing, poverty, homelessness, etc., education, no child left behind shouldn't even be a phrase. But we have it as a phrase because we know that there are some children who are left behind. So if we're going to do the work, see, one of the things that where we're missing this is we don't talk about, like you said, the elephant in the room. We don't really practice principle to the degree that we could, because it's easier to cotton candy, glitter, unicorns and rainbows, magic, this whole idea of, what do we call it in law of attraction? Princes, parking spaces, and palaces. It's all about manifesting I, me. What do I want? What do I need? We are so inwardly focused that it's what we used to say when I was a fundamental Christian was, you are so heavenly focused, whatever, that you're no earthly good. But it also says in scripture to be in the world, but not of it. Bring that consciousness of universality, oneness, the infinite magnitude of what it means to be open at the top, and demonstrate it. One of the reasons Reverend Ike and the Reverend Dr. Johnny Coleman and folks like them in their congregations did not speak about certain things the way we're addressing it is because it's not the same conversation. Our experience of the situation and the condition is different. We use different language in much the same way that if you go to your physician and you complain about this, you're going to call it your shoulder. But your doctor, when talking to other medical professionals, will say something about the deltoid, the scapula, the clavicle. They use different language. So in a predominantly Black church, it's a different conversation.
Well, again, that's one of the reasons why, again, that yours truly, and thank you for joining in the conversation this evening, that, again, we need to be having these kind of conversations within our organization. And that also we need to also study the history also about, again, being active and involved. My brother, my friend, thank you so very much. Thank you for being a light. Thank you for coming on the program and explaining that. I hope that our friend at least will hear that. And I hope that other people in New Thought will also hear what we just said this evening and will have a new thought about this discussion. Again, Dr. Raymond, thank you so very much. Really love you and appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. So it is that time to go, man. Time flies when you're having fun here. Again, remember that we are here for you at the New Thought Media Network. If you'd like prayer, if you'd like to talk to someone, again, if you go on our website, which is ntmedia.org, lots of information about what we do here. And again, join us on Sunday mornings. From all of us here in Akron to all of you, this is Pastor Michael Mangus wishing you a wonderful week.
Thanks for joining us this evening for Friday's Fireside Chat with Pastor Michael Mangus. Join us again next week at 8 Eastern, 6 Mountain for more spiritual conversations for today. For more information and replays of past shows, please visit the New Thought Radio and Media Network's Facebook page. Until next week, may God bless you richly and abundantly.